Camp counselors of Reddit, what is the most NSFW thing you've seen happen at camp? I was a camp counselor a few years ago at a camp for foster kids. One week a counselor caught a camper, M15, in bed with another camper, F14. The room they were in was tiny, and the 4 other girls in the bunks were awake and cheering them on. They were loud enough to wake the counselor, who pulled the male camper out of bed. The guy had a Ziploc bag around his DCK, held in place by a rubber band. I was both impressed at their dedication to trying to have safe sex, and appalled at how terribly they went about it. My favorite was a 13-year-old boy at camp out. Both his hands were in his sleeping bag and he was clearly masturbating. His counselor called a hand check, where you have to display both hands in the air. He only raised one hand. The counselor asked for both hands and he replied, "Give me 4 minutes." This actually happened earlier today. I work at a summer day camp at a local park with kids in kindergarten age group. Interesting gross things happen almost every day with kids at that age, but today's events took the cake. Basically, the 6-year-old boy found a dead bird in the grass and decided it would be fun to pick it up and smear the blood and guts all over his hands and arms. After doing that, he started chasing around other campers to try to share his bird entrails on them. I had the pleasure of catching the gore-covered kid, ripping the bird's ravaged carcass out of his hands, and spending half an hour in the bathroom getting him and myself cleaned up. When I asked him why the heck he picked up a dead animal, he said that he thought it was something awesome to do. Edit. Thanks for the gold, kind stranger. Just goes to show that comments about 6-year-olds savaging animals are totally the way to go. Counselors having a threesome in an empty cabin next to the bathrooms. Finally a chance to post this. One year I was working a regular camp and had a lead counselor run over to another counselor and I to say, "Look in the first stall of the boys' bathroom." We left our kids with our age group's female counselors and ran. By the time we made it, a crowd of counselors had formed around the toilet. Contained inside was by far the mightiest, largest turd I have ever seen in my life. Easily a diameter of 3 inches and long enough to be far down into the toilet while also freewheeling out of the surface of the water. No campers were told about this. A few days later a camper asked me if we were running to the bathroom the other day because of a giant piece of poop and claimed to be the conjurer of it. I was mortified. I was working at a young life camp in Colorado probably 12 years ago. I think it was the first day right around dinner time and a girl just up and died. Her heart just stopped. She was sitting talking with her friends and fell over. It was incredibly intense and very sad for a lot of people, and tons of people were there to witness it. It's not the most scandalous of camp stories, but it was certainly pretty fricked up and put a weird vibe on the rest of the week. I was a counselor at a day camp. We took kids to the zoo. A kid shoved his thumb fully inside a petting zoo goat's butt. I asked him why and he just shrugged, looking at me like I'm the idiot. I felt bad for the goat, but it was still standing next to him, so maybe it was into it. We heard rumors about the cabin next to us one week at camp. It was a game called Monkey, and it involved one of the kids getting naked and putting a sock over his DCK. He'd then swing around the room using the bed frames and whatnot, making monkey noises. To this day I'm not sure what the game was. I'm guessing you won if you didn't get AskReddit. After reading about all the camp counselors having sex with each other, I've decided I'm gonna be a camp counselor. I'm a ex-camp counselor. Tons of sex, but not enough for the stress that you get from those little shts 24/7. I had 2 twin brothers that were very handsy with each other. One day one of them came to me crying because his brother had bit his tongue after he tried kissing him. Had 6-year-old campers at a day camp. After swimming, found 2 of them facing each other naked in the locker room. They were standing there, hitting each other's erect penises and making the boing boing sounds. There was this Asian kid named Kevin who went to the bathroom to take a shitty. But there was pee on the toilet seat, so he started to cry and then took a shitty on the floor because he really had to go. I was a camp counselor years ago, and while I don't recall really seeing anything NSFW with the kids, I can tell you almost everything I saw with the counselors was NSFW. I couldn't walk into a room without seeing people freaking intense. On top of the staff washing machines. In the general store. Parents. If you send your kids to camp, just remember, literally the only thing those counselors are thinking about is freaking each other. I worked at a sleepaway Girl Scout camp with all female counselors and staff where a solid 60% were lesbian. There was a strictly enforced no more fricking in the bushes rule. Because so many counselors would go at it anywhere they could find. I work in a building that hosts a camp for people with autism and other mental handicaps. A guy with something was really attached to his counselor. A girl. He really liked her and asked her out almost every hour of the week. She finally said no, I have a boyfriend or something along those lines. He got really mad and stripped down. And freaked out. He peed and pooped all over the floor. When other counselors were trying to calm him down, he ran over to a fire extinguisher box and smashed his head into the glass. He had big chunks of glass in his face and forehead. Bleeding everywhere. We were told as building managers to stay clear of the floor he was on. They would clean it all up. It was odd. Another story. When he left the building, we also found a sort of poop shrine. He would poop in the closet and then mold underwear to it. He must have used a whole can of Febreze on the thing a day because we never knew about it. Couldn't smell anything. I worked as a counselor at a camp for adults with disabilities. All my campers were in their 20s, late 30s. One night one of my campers was masturbating loudly and furiously. Because we all slept in one giant room. Her noises were waking everyone up. It was so distracting that I had to give her the masturbation chat the next day and also explain it to all my campers privately. Boy, what a fun day that was. Ex-counselor here. Our camp has a thing where one night all the people who had been there for 3 years go out and do crazy shit in the fields by the camp. Needless to say, I saw a lot of breasts. But other than that and smoking weed, nothing really big happened. Apparently in years before, some of the abandoned cabins were used during that night for rowdy SX parties with lots of alcohol involved. This was back in like the 1990s, where I guess the upper staff were a lot more lenient. I worked at the camp in 2010, so I guess I missed the really interesting stuff. It was interesting to bring up the topic to my boss who worked at the camp as a counselor at that time and see him get all red-faced and not know what I was talking about. TLDR. A wild night once a year, used to a crazy SX party, but not we just flash each other and smoke. Day 1 at camp. We jumped out of the bus and ran around because we were so excited. My friend ran behind the bus and the bus ran him over. He was rushed off by ambulance. We didn't see him for another 3 months. Edit spelling. I sound like a 12-year in those few sentences. I'm 42. I worked at an 8-week sleepaway camp in the Northeast and was working in a bunk of 7 and 8-year-olds. As the summer went along, we lost a few counselors due to the fact our campers were the devil's spawn and only 6 or 7 years old. So us remaining counselors were spread thin. And one day, in the span of 10 minutes when we didn't have a counselor in the bunk, I'm walking back and all the kids are running out of the bunk screaming about how one of the campers, M6, put his DCK in another kid's mouth. M7. This is an all-boys camp too. And when the camper was later asked why he let the other kid put his DCK in his mouth, the kid's response was, "Because they dared me to." After long lashings from the director and owners and what I assume was some long talks with the kid's parents, it was all swept under the rug and forgotten. TLDR. A camper put his DCK in another male camper's mouth. Was checking rooms after everyone was supposed to have moved out. Found a 12-year-old fricking another 12-year-old male and coming just as I opened the door. They didn't hear me, so I waited a few minutes, then knocked on the door and opened it to find 2 innocent kids packing their bags. They apologized for being slow to get out of their room. There were these 2 kids. which we nicknamed Poo Poo Picasso and Gandhi. Both were in my friend's cabin, which was year 2 campers. So the kids were just out of 3rd grade. So I guess they were around 8 or 9 years old. Anyway, Poo Poo Picasso would smear his shitty. He'd defecate inside of his trunk. http www. Everything Summer Camp. Common images products large footlocker trunks camo trunk angle. JPG. And left it there for a day before my friend noticed the smell. He wrote on the walls of the bathrooms with his own fesses. It was disgusting. Now Gandhi didn't want to be at summer camp. Despite it being a total blast. He would BTCH and complain and ask to call home, which he wasn't allowed to do unless it was a rather serious situation. Fine, we deal with this sometimes. But what we weren't expecting was for him to go on a hunger strike. That's right. A hunger strike. He just would refuse to eat for several meals. He would break and eat a ton of snacks during our afternoon refreshment period when he thought we wouldn't notice. What made Gandhi really special is that he learned how to vomit on command. To do so he would drink insane amounts of water. Then when we would ask him to do something he didn't want to do, he would just vomit everywhere. It was nasty. But at the same time, typing this out is making me giggle. Eventually the 2 kids got over it, I think. I was a day camp counselor during the summers in high school. I watched another counselor eat herself out after smoking by the gully. My 16-year-old self couldn't look away. Also, generally, the counselors are freaking like rabbits. If you were banging her reverse cowgirl style, she could bend down to simultaneously suck your balls. That's the dream.